Let me be honest with you guys. I'm not a fan of first dates. I've only had a couple of good first dates, others are plain disasters. However, from time to time, I like to get on Tinder and swipe between pictures. Tinder dates always turn into funny stories, sometimes even spooky ones. My guy best friend Ryan and I decided to go on a few Tinder dates just for the fun of it. Before we went out, we would always agree on a safe word, and that word was hot dog. A text saying, "Hey, can you pick up some hot dogs on the way?" Or something along those lines basically meant, "Can you call me and pretend there's an emergency so I can get out of this situation without being rude?" We had a lot of safe words meaning different things, and had an unspoken rule that every time we were on a date, we would let the other person know. I met this guy called Brandon on the application. We had a few good chats and decided to go out for brunch. I called Ryan and I let him know that I'll be having brunch with this Brandon guy. I'm not a supermodel, but I'm a bit too picky when it comes to first date outfits. I dived into my closet and decided to wear a bright pink off-shoulders blouse and a tiny little white skirt. And of course, my signature mermaid hue high heels. Brandon texted me saying he knows of a nice Italian restaurant. Despite the fact that we were going out for brunch, I somehow agreed to Italian. The guy comes to pick me up for our brunch date. He looks nice with lots of black on. He says he needs to make a stop along the way. I couldn't really seem to disagree. I mean, he clearly forgot to buy me flowers. So I say it's fine and he can make a stop along the way. He pulls up to a gravesite and I see people and I'm like, okay, maybe he's picking something up from someone, or maybe he works here and needs to do something. What was really going through my mind though is what the heck is he doing and why is he bringing me to a gravesite on a first date? I just waited in the car, especially since there's morning people nearby and I'm wearing a bright pink outfit. He gets out of the car and opens up the passenger side door. I tell him something along the lines of, "I don't want to draw attention to myself and I'll just wait here." And he says something along the lines of, "Don't worry, you look great. They will love you." Despite my pink outfit and my high heels, Brandon was very well built. He was very tall and had broad shoulders. One could easily tell that he is into martial arts. So I wasn't very worried about my safety. However, I was really worried about his mental health. I'm not even kidding. I was so very curious about what on earth were we doing there at 10 a.m. on a first date. And who is they, as in, they love you. Okay, so the next part is a bit hard to define whether it was creepy, surreal, or a prank show. It was his mother's funeral. I stood next to a group of weeping people watching as my date's mother was lowered into the ground. Needless to say, it was really, really awkward, especially since he kept trying to hold my hand and nuzzle me for comfort. It's a first date, for God's sake. I waited for the service to be over, as I didn't want to be rude to the grieving people or to the dead woman. And then I texted Ryan, "Hot dog." So Ryan called me and pretended to be my landlord and told me that my apartment was flooded. I quickly apologized to Brandon and called an Uber. While I was waiting for my Uber to arrive, Brandon kept on holding my hand and literally begging me to stay a little bit longer. He also said we could still go out for brunch, but I politely said we could reschedule for another time. I think his cousins or something were standing too close. He told them that we've been dating for a few weeks and they should talk me into staying. I was so glad that my Uber finally arrived. I hopped inside the car like a freaking ninja. I called Ryan and asked him to come over. We stayed together, and honestly, I've never laughed as much as Ryan made me laugh that night. And guess what? Ryan and I realized we were actually in love a few weeks later. We gave up online dating and we've been together ever since.
Hi, my name is Laura. I'm 23 years old, and I teach art. I recently got married to the love of my life, Norman. I considered him my friend, my brother, my son, and my husband. We loved to prank each other, even after we got married. For instance, one time I turned off all the lights in the apartment, dressed up as a monster, and scared the living daylights out of him when he came back from the store. Another time, he damaged my car. I put mayonnaise on his toast. I did worry sometimes that our jokes might go too far. I mean, he did get really mad at me once. He stopped talking to me for 2 days, even though I apologized profusely many times. After that, our pranks sort of stopped. I figured our pranking days were over. About a month later, I returned home to find a letter on the floor. I opened it and read it. If you don't pay us 100,000 by Friday, we will kill Norman. I smiled. Norman was pranking me again. When he returned home, I hugged him and showed him his prank letter. He read it carefully, and his brow furrowed. He appeared seriously frightened and swore that this was not part of any prank. He told me that we needed to leave town as soon as possible. I asked him why, and he told me that before he married me, he had stolen a gold statue from a motorcycle gang. I asked him why he couldn't just return it with an apology, and he told me that the statue was worth a lot of money and could make us really wealthy. That night, an armed masked burglar broke into our apartment and confronted us with a gun. He said to Norman, "Hello, Norman, long time no see. You need to choose between the statue or your wife. Choose now." Norman was hesitant. Then he steadfastly said, "I can't give up the statue. Take my wife." The masked man turned towards me. He pointed the gun at me in a threatening manner. I was frantic. I was staring at Norman in shock. Suddenly, the masked man ripped off his mask. It was Keanu, Norman's brother. Norman sat down, laughing so hard he could hardly stop to breathe. Between laughs, he said, "This is payback for the last prank of yours. I was so mad at him that day, but it's all right. He doesn't know what I have planned for him."